This morning at our Sunday service, a couple brought their little child, about 2 years old, a little girl, and her cousin is also visiting her, about 2 years old, a little girl. They were dressed alike, they looked alike, they were about as cute as they could possibly be. Fortunately, they were in the back of the temple because if they'd been in the front, no one would have listened to Lakshmi at all. I had a very hard time keeping my attention because they were so utterly lovable. And just, there was no effort. I know them. I never met the cousin. I know one of them a little bit. They're not my children. They're not my godchildren. But just, you can't help yourself. When you see so much innocence and so much beauty, your heart automatically opens. That's why God inspires us to have children, because it teaches us about how to love. So I was, at the end of the service this morning, as we do all through December, we substitute, our closing song is one of the Christmas carols. The last Sunday before Christmas, we always sing Christmas Mystery, which is the song, one of the songs that Swamiji wrote for Christmas. I've been hearing it for about 50 years, which is a pretty long time. I don't want to count how many times I've heard it. And not that I'm bored with it by any means, but today I'm looking up at it, at the verse, the chorus. Who tell to me this mystery, the name of the story, Christmas Mystery, how a tiny babe in a manger laid. So that's setting the scene. We're talking about Jesus. Here's the line. Could so many hearts to love persuade? And then we say again, this Holy Son of Mary. But that word persuade was the word that I heard and I saw in a way that I never thought of before exactly. Persuade means that there's reluctance, doesn't there? You want to persuade somebody to do something that's good for them, that you want them to do, whatever it might be. There's resistance, and then there's a force that tries to get you to go in another direction. Now, the entire drama of human life, which was described at the very beginning, whenever virtue declines and vice is in the ascendant, I, the infinite spirit, take visible human form to restore righteousness, to restore harmony, to restore dharma. But the history of these great saints descending is not that they just walk onto the planet. Everybody says, oh yeah, that's right. Love everybody, be kind, trust God, be courageous, be good. It doesn't work like that. It's always a struggle, and sometimes it ends very dramatically, as the Krishna's incarnation ends in the Mahabharata war and ends with him being shot in the heel, I believe, and dies. You know, it's just all. And Jesus, of course, we don't talk about it now, but we all kind of know where it goes at the end. You know, it starts nice and it ends dramatically, but it doesn't end. It just, and Helen's reading from the Bible, you know, and his kingdom is never ending. This is the drama that we're in. We come into human life as these darling little girls do, and they're innocent, not because they have no karma, but you kind of get a little hiatus from about birth to 12. That's why you change so much at 12. You know, all of a sudden, the mother says to the daughter the same thing she said to her 10 times, honey, maybe you could make your bed before you go to school. And the daughter who's just turned 12 says, you hate me, you've always hated me. And it's like, what? But we get a little hiatus, and then karma begins. You know, when we become adults, so to speak, biologically or in other ways, then we start the real process where we really get to choose. And of course, children show their personalities from the womb, so the inclinations are there, but there's still a little bit of freedom. But then it begins. And then there are lots of forces trying to persuade us in lots of directions. And it's just our peers, our culture, maybe our parents, depending on what their values are, our friends. There's just all these forces, and they're always playing against us, pulling us this way and pulling us that way. And the whole drama is to become so anchored, not in this whirling story of many, many lifetimes, where we just start over again and just try one more time. Master said the reason we incarnate so many times is not because our quest for happiness fails miserably, but because it almost works. It almost works. And so we get it in our head, but I'll just make a little adjustment, just a little adjustment, and then it'll be all just fine. And we start over, and all these forces try to persuade us. Look out for yourself, don't be kind. If you hurt and you inflict your pain on others, then you'll have less pain. It's their fault for not understanding me. If you only hadn't provoked me, I wouldn't have done that. Just there it goes. And we do it over and over and over. And we seize what looks like the easiest kind of love. The kind where it seems to come back to us. I had a very dear and loving mother. I was very fortunate in my birth. My mother loved being a mother. She loved us. And I remember, I don't think it was I, but one of my siblings asked my mother once, what was the happiest time of your life? And it was both deeply touching and anguishing when she replied, when you 3 children were small and you belonged to me. On one hand, thank you, God, for giving me a mother who loved us like that. But of course, we never belonged to her. We always belonged to God and to our own destiny. My father put it this way, the child disappears into the grown-up. So we choose that love a lot. Now, the wonderful thing about parental love is that of necessity, it's utterly self-sacrificing. I remember there's lots of myths about how the children eat the parents. Just the children eat the parents, because they do. I remember vividly realizing at one point that my father's rather stodgy, unadventurous, can't do anything on the spur of the moment way of relating to life was because of me and my brother and my sister. Before we were there, he could do anything he wanted, but after we got there, he was our servant. And if we're wise, you see, we realize that's the greatest kind of love. It's the greatest kind of love that finds its fulfillment in the love itself and not in what I get from it. And the greatest joy becomes the joy of just, I love because it's my nature to love. When Swami Kriyananda was in a very difficult situation, being severely mistreated by people he loved greatly and had trusted, he said, I continue to love them. He said, because if I don't, then I'm the one who loses. If I allow someone else's behavior to take away from me my ability to be a channel for love, what have I gained? I've lost everything. So Jesus comes. First he comes as a baby, and we celebrate this baby Jesus. This was actually a worship that was started by St. Francis to do what we're doing tonight, which is to reenact a living creche. Because he was there, Francis was there to teach people the simplest, most spontaneous kind of love. And of course, that's so easy. Those little girls today in church, I didn't have to try. When the baby is there, we don't have to try. And what that allows us to find out is what a joy it is to love, with no following sentence, but just to be an instrument. Forget oneself completely in that act of loving. And the power of the saint, the power of the avatar, power of the baby Jesus, is that that love just pours out of us. And what we learn is the joy of loving. And that's how he persuades us. He doesn't persuade us by, and he did, he preached, he spoke. He persuaded us by his existence, because he himself, even as a baby, a tiny babe in a manger laid, he was the pure, total expression of God's love for us. And once you get a taste of that, once you begin to understand, it's not all these people, it's not all these children, no matter how lovely they are, they're not really the source. They're the messengers. They're the messengers. Our very capacity to love is a God-given grace. The fact that we can do it at all is the grace of God. And then these masters come and show us by their example, but also by the magnetism of their presence, whether in physical form or in the spirit, something happens. And all of a sudden, we see ourselves differently. That's what persuades us. We're not persuaded because of what we get. Being a saint is a fairly dangerous profession. The number of them who have really hard times is quite high. And the number of them who are martyred is much greater than for the average businessman. Really. So it's not like, this is like a bargain where we get. This is not a fair deal. This is that we discover that I was born for this. I was just born for this. And everything, all this seeking through all these lifetimes of having children and sweethearts and all these things that we want and wonderful parents and grandparents and all of these things, we were pursuing perfect love. And then the masters come through, the saints come through. My child, I know what you're really looking for. And all the stories about, it's who I am. It's inherent within me. That's why we're so hungry. We're looking for the truth of our own nature. And that's what the little baby shows us. We look at the baby, we see that magnificence coming through, and we realize, what happens, what awakens within us is I am that. That is who I am. I am a limitless capacity to love. And no circumstance, no betrayal, no unkindness, no solitude can ever take that away from us. It's a very persuasive argument, isn't it? But it's not from the mind. It's from the whole of our being. That the light appears, we see ourselves as that light, and it becomes impossible to be anything else. That's the mystery, and it is a mystery. There's no way to say anything more. How so many hearts to love persuade, and let us put our hearts into that. Let's not make Jesus work too hard to get us on his side. Let's just rush into that light. Bless you.